privilege to welcome you to our program this evening entitled Unrivaled, California's Extra Virgin Olive Oil. This is the third in this forum series that RMI has produced over the last year. The Institute, Robert Mondavi Institute, was created to provide a forum for exchange of ideas on food and wine between the departments, but also with the public. The university has a mandate to not just teach our students, but also let the public know about what we're doing here. And tonight's program is one of our efforts to get you engaged in what's going on here on campus. Tonight's evening topic highlights our industry-oriented efforts, in this case by the Olive Center, to support the olive industry. Much as UC Davis supports other industries like wine, fruit and nuts, flowers, industry, and so on. Olive oil has become a major value-added ag commodity in California, and today I look forward to hearing how our efforts at the Olive Center have helped build that sector of the ag economy here in a very competitive environment. We have two speakers, and since they're going to be presenting together, I'll introduce both of them. Our campus speaker is Selina Wang. She received her PhD in chemistry, in computational chemistry, I should say, in 2008. A few steps away from olive oil. For a short period afterward, she was a postdoc in viticulture and enology. But then she got a postdoc position in food science and technology, where she was tasked to analyze some olive oil. Well, she was very successful. So a few years later, she was named the research director at the UC Davis Olive Center. Her research and further developments led to new techniques that could probe the quality and freshness of olive oil. She led their chemistry study on the quality and purity of supermarket olive oil from 2009 to 2011. And if you were paying attention at all back then, you would have heard about this. It received worldwide attention, was mentioned in over 1,000 media outlets, and it led to new olive oil standards here in the state of California. Just a couple of years ago, in 2018, she became the Cooperative Extension Specialist in Small-Scale Fruit and Vegetable Processing in the UC Davis Department of Food Science and Technology. But she still has a hand in research at the Olive Center. I should mention, by the way, this afternoon, her very first PhD student officially received her degree. She provides extension programs that help large and small-scale fruit and vegetable processors. Speaking with Selina is Brady Whitlow. He is the CEO of Corto Olive Company. That's one of the big companies, I think. In 1991, that was the same year I came to UC Davis. He joined a startup company called Muir Glen Organic Tomato Products as one of the vice presidents. He continued to serve that company in a number of roles through 1999, when the company was sold to General Mills. So it's a little bigger than that, than when they started. Since then, Brady has also worked in a number of leadership roles in the food industry, including Amy's Kitchen, Barbara's Bakery, and most importantly, as the owner of his own pizza restaurant, Pizza Romeo. He has a BA in Communication from University of Oregon and an MBA from Santa Clara University. He also serves on the board of the Olive Oil Commission of California. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for coming. In spite of all the hubbub about world health, I'm glad to see you all here. If you don't shake my hand, I won't be offended. Very pleased to be here with Selina. When she called me and told me about this, I was pleased because we've been working together for well over a decade. The study that Andy mentioned with Davis was a brainchild of a couple of the larger companies. California Olive Ranch and Corto Olive funded, at that time, the Young Olive Center to help do this study. It was independent of us, of course, but it was a big deal at the time, and many of you have heard about that. So Today we're going to cover broad issues. Selina's going to cover science, and I'm not. I'm going to talk more broadly about the industry and trends, and hopefully you'll walk away with the same enthusiasm about the future of California olive oil that I have and many of you here have. Before we get started, real quick, so Andy mentioned this seminar, these lecture series are for students and non-students. How many students here? Okay. All right, I like it. A student out down front. How many people from the olive oil industry? And I know many of you, so raise your hand. Look around and look at, okay, that's good because the rest of you are not. Because those of you that raise your hands, you've probably heard most of what I'm going to say. And you know both of us. So that's good because there's a lot of buzz going on in the olive oil world. So with that, we're going to start with a brief video that sort of sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about, Selina and myself. So it's a Corto video, but it'll give you some sense of what's going on. And then we'll start yabbering after that. In today's world, it's hard to imagine a product quite as misunderstood as olive oil. Chefs go to such great lengths to ensure that only the freshest ingredients make it into their dishes, and yet somehow the vast majority of the oil in the market lacks fresh flavor, simply because it's rancid. It begs the question, how did we get here? Cut the lights?
Yeah.
Raise the volume.
Because of cost, old world olive producers can't afford to hand-pick olives at the peak of freshness.
Thank you.
Instead, they wait for the olives to turn black on the tree before harvesting, so that removing the olives is easier. The problem is that olives are a fruit, and when they're black and rotten, they're not even worth harvesting. We knew that if we were going to make the freshest olive oil, we had to change this. And we had to start where the olive does, in the groves.
Our trees planted on trellis system, along with our specialty harvester, allow us to pick the olives at the peak of their flavor and freshness. Usually that's when the olives turn from green to violet in the fall. This way, only the freshest fruit makes it to the mill.
Our entire milling philosophy is centered around freshness. In order to capture this freshness, our entire process, from tree to cellar, happens in 8 hours or less. Everything we do serves a distinct purpose of freshness. It helps to remember that olive oil is essentially a fresh pressed juice, and to talk about quality is really to talk about freshness. You know, the real enemies of fresh tasting oil are light, heat, and air. This is why we protect our freshly extracted oil in a climate-controlled cellar, meaning that from the time the oil is milled to the point the oil first touches the plate, it is as fresh as it can be. Like great wines, different olive varietals bring unique characteristics to the oil. This is where the art and science of making olive oil come together. When properly blended, these unique characteristics come together in harmony, enhancing the qualities of each variety. This is how we ensure that restaurants receive a consistently fresh and flavorful product every single time.
It doesn't matter how fresh our oil is at the mill, if it's not fresh for our chefs every time they go to use it. We developed our own oxygen-free bag-in-a-box system with the one-way pour spout to ensure every ounce of oil is fresh till the very last drop. We call it Flavor Lock Box, and it makes all the difference.
Our goal as a company is simple. We want to support and inspire chefs to create better dishes and explore new flavor possibilities using premium, fresh olive oil. We're Corto Olive Company, and we produce uniquely fresh, honest, extra virgin olive oil for the most discerning of chefs. Oops, there we go.
I don't have a video like that for the Olive Center. Not yet. What is so special about extra virgin olive oil? From the video you just watched, is basically fresh juice, come from olives. So if you look at this picture, would you think that olive oil is more like the vegetable oil on the left, or it's more like the orange juice on the right? Yet it's confusing to the consumer because it's sold in the grocery store side by side with oils like vegetable oil, right? If technically you could actually sell extra virgin olive oil in the refrigerated aisles in the grocery store, much like fresh juice. Okay. So what is the actual definition of extra virgin olive oil? This is basically the definition. It's the highest grade, also the most expensive. Right? If you go to the supermarket, you know this. It tends to be a little bit more expensive than other oils or other grades. It's processed through only mechanical means. From the video you watched, you saw the olives got cleaned and processed and stored. There was no solvents added during processing, and there's no heat that's added. And no defects. Does that sound good? You'll take your food without defects? It should also have a little flavor of fresh olives. What do you think about that, Brady?
Yeah. So the key takeaway here that Selina's pointing to, and then we talked about in the video, is most consumers, if you take away nothing else from this lecture, remember olive oil is more like fruit juice than it is vegetable oil. It's a fresh fruit. And the most common question I get asked by people that hear that I'm in the olive oil world is, well, what does extra virgin mean? And so Selina just told you. But the problem is that definition that's defined by the world of olive oil, the International Olive Council, the dominant players in olive oil, that definition for olive oil is like getting a D in school. You passed, I passed, but you didn't do very much right, okay? You just barely got through. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the industry to a large degree. And I have to be careful because there are a lot of world-class olive oil producers around the world. But the big picture, when you look at it and you go to the grocery store, has this problem. So, I went to the grocery store recently and I bought this bottle of premium Italian extra virgin olive oil cold pressed. And it was $40 for, this is a $7.50 or how, this is a $7.50, okay. This is premium extra virgin Italian olive oil cold pressed, and this was $5. So call this a $7.50, it's going to be $7. What's the difference? That's what consumers say. They walk in, $40, okay, no, I got to find extra virgin. Oh yeah, they're both extra virgin. Italian, they're both Italian. What's going on here? Okay, well that's the challenge we have. I alluded to it in the video a little bit about the challenge with harvesting early versus late. Let me give you a little background before we get into the opportunities and the changes that we're making in California and around the world. And there are other countries making wonderful strides in olive oil. Let me give you a little background. Olive oil, as much as we've come to love it and as big as we think it is in this industry, and yes, we're the big guys, California Olive Ranch is a big guys, there's other big guys, we are teeny. Olive oil is a specialty oil in the world of culinary oil. We are dwarfed by seed oils. All other cooking oils, higher volume oils, there's a few specialty oils, but higher volume cooking oils like olive oil, canola oil, safflower oil. Canola, safflower, corn oil, if you think about it, those are seed oils. And to get the oil out of the seed, it's not that difficult. You just have to heavily process it and refine it. And Selina will talk in a bit about refining and what that is. By contrast, remember, olive oil is juicing that fruit, and that's what we consume. So when you refine seed oil, you end up with a colorless, odorless, tasteless vegetable oil. It's vegetable oil, so purportedly it's healthier than animal fat, but it has no flavor, character, and you could argue not the same health benefits that olive oil has because it's a juiced fruit. So that's the key difference with olive oil. Okay, now, and when I say olive oil, I mean extra virgin olive oil. The world of olive oil, and again, those of you in the industry know this like the back of your hand, but I want to give you a little cursory overview of the industry. Most consumers believe that olive oil all comes from Italy, right? Oh yeah, it's Italian olive oil. That's why every bottle in the grocery store says product of Italy. Well, in fact, the world's olive oil production is dominated by Spain. Spain is upwards of 50% of the world's olive oil production. And the others, Italy, Greece, Turkey, round out the top. California, or the US, represents less than a fraction, or it's a fraction of 1%. So we're a teeny speck in the world of olive oil. So Spain is dominant in olive oil. Just to give you a perspective, does anybody know how many acres California grows of almonds? Anybody? Almonds? No. Good guess, 1 million. It's actually about 1,300,000 acres of almonds, one of our big crops, right? Olives for olive oil in California, about 40,000 acres. Teeny. Nothing, okay? How many acres do you think Spain grows for olive oil? I mean, they can't be as big as almonds, right? Try 5 million acres of olives for olive oil in Spain. 5 million. That's almost as much arable land as we have in California. We grow about 9 million crops worth of, or acres worth of crops. So, I'm going to show you a quick video that explains the challenge that the old world producers who dry land farm, they don't have the water required to do what we do in California with the vineyard style planting. They dry land farm, they have 5 million acres, and they know, like we know, to get the best fresh olive oil off those trees, you got to get it in when the olives are green. You really do, and I'm going to show you some data on that in a minute. So let's just take a quick look and see how they do it. I think I got to do it here. There we go. So this is I could have cut this down a little bit, but I think you'll find it interesting. We go to Spain regularly to chat with friends, and again, there are very good people in Spain that want to make good oil and do make good oil. But the problem is this is their landscape. They don't have water for irrigation like we do. The problem is they can't get the olives off the trees like this until late December, January, February, March. Because abscission, which is how strong the stem is on that olive oil, dictates that if you shake the tree like that when the olives are green, when they want them, the olives will not come off. And I have video of that. So what do? They wait till the olives are black, starting to turn, and then they'll fall off. There's video here coming up where the grower, who's a wonderful grower, was happier than a clam because we just had a windstorm and it knocked off all the olives onto the ground. So does it look like they care about getting the olives from the ground to the mill in 8 hours? Not really. They care about high volume production, getting those 5 million acres harvested so they can get them into the mill and get oil out. What kind of oil? At this point, they don't care. Now, let me assure you that in October and November, they're hand picking like crazy, but their labor is no cheaper than ours. So they can only get about 20% of those 2 million or 5 million acres harvested to make premium oil. And that's what this is. This is hand harvested premium oil from green olives harvested in October, November. $40 a bottle. What happens with the rest of the oil is they get oil out of it. Some of it is marginal extra virgin by the D standard. Most of it is virgin, which has defects. And then quite a bit of it, maybe in some years most of it, is what's called lampante oil. Has anybody here other than the olive oil friends heard of lampante? Yeah, lampante. I'll talk about that in a second. That's lampante oil. That's oil that's considered inedible by humans. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind turn that. Which, unfortunately, and I feel for them, they've been subsidized to plant and plant and plant and plant, and that's all they have. Unfortunately, they're stuck with a model that forces them to produce a large volume of lampante. Now, olive oil's been around for thousands of years, right? 1,000 years ago, lampante was extremely valuable. Why was lampante valuable? Anybody know what lampante means? Lamp oil. There was a huge demand for lamp oil. Not so much today. So what do they do with lamp oil or off oil? Well, it's really very simple. They deodorize it or refine it, and it becomes this. So what you end up with is a vegetable oil made out of olives that sells for $5 or $6 in the grocery store. And that's what you're buying when you don't trust the brand you're buying and when you're buying cheap oil. Now, again, I have to be careful because there are very reputable Spanish, Italian, Greek, Tunisian companies that make good oil. But if you're going to make good oil, it has to happen, you have to harvest in the October, November time frame for green olives. Now, this is what I was talking about. Just bear with me really quick. This is as sciencey as I get, okay? So the, let's see, I think I got a pointer on here. Yeah, there it is. This line here represents polyphenols. How many people know what polyphenols are? Okay, good. More than just the olive oil guys. Polyphenols are nature's antioxidants. All fruits and vegetables have them. They're what inhibit oxidation, keep bananas from turning brown, and they keep olives fresh. There is a high degree of polyphenols in green olives, as shown by this chart. I didn't put the source. This is IOC, International Olive Council. Oops, I went backwards. There we go. So the polyphenols are highest in October, November. They fall off dramatically when the olives start to go black. Now, I neglected to mention this earlier. In case anybody asks me this question later, I get the question all the time, do you use green olives or black olives? And the answer is yes. All olives go from green to black. Okay. So when the olives go from green to black, they start to lose polyphenols. All right. Now, this line here is fruit drop. It becomes easier to shake those olives off the trees in late December, January, February, March. So the peak of the Old World harvesting occurs in January and February. So they do make good oil back here, and they make, remember, a heck of a lot more oil than we do. But most of their production is past the prime of flavorful, fresh, polyphenol-filled oil, okay? California, and it looks like we make a lot of oil, that's not what that means. We just, virtually our entire production is in the prime period when we're getting the best oil. And that's why California and other New World growers who can plant vineyard-style plantings have a leg up on Old World production. They're trying to get there, but they've got limitations. Now, just so you understand, this is what New World production looks like. It's a vineyard-style planting. This is a modified grape harvester. We plant olive trees like we plant grapevines, and our family grows grapes, for wine. So, you know, people go, oh, it's mechanized. I love the romance of hand harvest. Great. Well, we can hand harvest, but then I'm going to charge you $40 a bottle instead of you know, what California Olive Ranch, or we can charge more like $10 a bottle. Okay, that's how we can do that because we're much more efficient. Okay, so real quick, and then I'm almost done, and we get to the science. The mill, and we have a nice mill like others in the state. The mill is simple. We have all this fancy mill. It's there for one reason. We are a big juicer. That's all we do. We don't have chemicals. We don't do anything real technical. We're just juicing the fruit, and what comes out, we package and sell. And it's really that simple. So when you're thinking about olive oil, as Selina said earlier, think about fresh juice. You want freshness.
So this is probably familiar to all of you. If you go to a supermarket, you are confronted by these options, right? So we know what extra virgin olive oil is. It's fresh juice. Oops. What about the other two? One says classical, because it's Italian olive oil. And the other one says extra light olive oil. Or it says extra light tasting olive oil. The tasting is in a smaller font. So what is the difference? What's not saying here is that the olive oil and extra light olive oil are refined olive oil, which go through a completely different process from making extra virgin olive oil. And I won't go over the whole processing steps, but these are another example where it says extra virgin olive oil, and this one says virgin olive oil. One says rich taste, the other one says extra light taste. So you can decide for your own cooking preference if you want extra taste or a little lighter tasting. This is what's different. One is just basically squeeze the olives. I wish it was that easy. You squeeze the olives and then you get a juice out. The other one, you go through, they all do it a little differently, but there are 4 primary steps, which is degumming. You remove all the gunk from the oil. Neutralization, basically when the oil, like Brady was saying, when they fall on the ground, when doing late harvest, they pick them up. There's fermentation that happens in this process. So there's higher acidity in this oil, so they need to add some base to acid to remove the extra acidity. So that happens during neutralization. During bleaching, they remove all the colors, which is why refined oil, or let's say olive oil or extra light olive oil, are generally lighter in color compared to extra virgin olive oil. And then the last step is deodorization. Got to take all the smelly things out, right? So there's fustiness, there's bad smelling that comes with fermented olives, so we got to take all that out. But during this process, you also remove any good flavors, right? Because the deodorization will take all the flavors out. So that's why you end up with a colorless, odorless, tasteless. It's light tasting, right? So I will just go over this really quickly. I won't bore you with this, but Andy mentioned it earlier that part of our research resulted in help to build a standard in California. And this is basically a quick glance at the standard, how California now has one of the stricter standards in the world compared to other standards that are available. So USDA has a voluntary standard, not enforced. International Olive Council, IOC, also has a standard. But basically, these parameters, free fatty acidity, peroxide value, absorbance in ultraviolet, all these are chemical parameters that are useful to tell you the quality of the oil. And you can see that the limits are lower in California standards, which is basically a way to tighten this, the quality. And also, we have 2 methods that are not included in the USDA and IOC standards. And these 2 methods listed right here, these 2 are actually much more sensitive measurement for freshness of the oil. And this is related to all we've been talking about since we started is olive oil is a fresh juice, and we need to have chemical markers that are sensitive to measure freshness. And another thing that is different in the California olive oil standard is the best before date requirement. This has not been a requirement. If you go to the grocery store, sometimes you see a best before date, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you see a harvest date, sometimes you don't. All this is to provide more information for the consumers to make educated decisions when they buy their food. So I showed you this picture earlier, right? If I turn this one around, turn it back, I just turn the extra virgin olive oil around, okay? This is what I saw on the label. This one has 2 dates. Well, let's not also forget that this olive oil comes from 4 different countries. Would you buy your juice, orange juice, that come from 4 different countries? Probably not. But this one has 2 best before dates. Not sure which one is the right one. But that is the reason why now that we need to have a clear message to the consumer that there needs to be a best before date that's meaningful, rather than just arbitrarily put some dates on the back of the bottle. So this is the report that a lot of people know about from the Olive Center that was co-founded by Corto, also California Olive Ranch, when Olive Center first started. Basically what we found was that 68% of store-bought extra virgin olive oil did not meet the USDA extra virgin olive oil grade. A lot of those oils were simply not fresh, and they did not meet a standard. A lot of those oil, maybe they were also come from the olives that were picked from the ground in the really late harvest and processed, and then they had defects, or maybe they were refined. Now we scare you enough. We're going to taste some oils, but we're going to do a tasting together. How many of you have done a guided tasting? A lot of you. Ah, huh? With wine. Oh, how many of you have done a guided tasting with olive oil? Okay, still quite a few. Got some olive oil experts in here. Okay. Yeah? Yeah, okay. So, well, you're in for a treat. But before we start, we want to tell you about what to taste, right? What do you think are the positive things that's associated with good olive oil? What do you look for?
Green grassiness.
Green grassiness. Good, because it's come from green fruit. What else?
Kind of buttery.
Kind of buttery. Okay.
Pepper.
What?
Pepper.
Pepper. Okay. Peppery, a little spicy. So, positive attributes. Fruitiness. Right? It comes from fresh fruit, so you should have some fruitiness. Pungency. There's this compound, it's called oleocanthal. It should give you a little bite in the back of your throat. This compound has shown to have similar bioactivity as ibuprofen. So if you have a headache, you could just take a shot of olive oil and get the same effect. But if you dissolve ibuprofen pill in water and you take a shot, you will feel that same pungency that you feel hopefully in some of these olive oil you will taste today. That is pungency. It's a little different from spicy or peppery because you don't feel it right away. You have to swallow the oil, and then it might kick you, okay? And bitterness. So you expect your green tea, coffee to be bitter, dark chocolate to be bitter. You should have some of that in your olive oil as well. Okay? A lot of the phenolics are bitter naturally. Therefore, if your olive oil has these phenolics, natural antioxidants, your olive oil will be a little bitter. Okay? So I think now, well, we're not quite ready yet. We have to also talk about the negatives, which I'll just summarize everything in one slide. Right? So rancidity, when the oil is already oxidized, fusty, musty, winey, come from fermentation that happens before the olive fruits were processed. Frozen, if there's a freeze or frost before the olives were picked from the trees, then they might have a frozen defect. This is not if you put your bottle of olive oil in the freezer and it's frozen and it's going to have a defect. These are frozen from the fruit, okay? So we're going to taste 4 oils today, and Brady will do this together.
Okay.
So
Most of you have done this. Question?
Could you define fusty?
fusty is the smell, like wet socks. You're just dirty.
I heard it best described as cat pee.
Cat peas? Kind of like a wet high school gym.
Right?
Solvents?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what causes, you're asking about fusty? Yeah, what causes fustiness?
Oh, it's when the fruits are fermented. So basically there's alcohol that's building up. That's,
Like a mildew?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
a yeast associated?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
There's several classic defects. The most common one that the study found is rancidity. That's when the fat gets old and it starts to get a rancid flavor. We'll see if we can taste some of that. But
Hopefully.
problematic
Can't
is
wait.
when we were watching the video of the olives falling on the ground. Remember, this is a fresh fruit. When it starts to oxidize before you make the oil, you'll get off flavors that are fusty, musty. And then there's other problems that occur in the mill if the oil sits on the sediment that, because you're pulling the oil out of the rest of the material. If it sits on there, you'll get another defect. It's called muddy sediment. So milling olive oil isn't that hard, I say to my master miller who's back here.
He's laughing.
But the key is growing good olives and getting them fresh into the mill. If he gets that, he can make good oil. Screwing up the olive oil at the mill, it's kind of hard to do. You got to work at it, screwing it up.
Your job is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's taste our first one. So the oil on the left.
Put your hand over it. If you've done a guided tasting, you put your hand over it just like a glass of wine. You want to get the volatiles collecting in the space in your glass.
And you want to put it in the middle of your palm to kind of heat up the oil a little bit with the temperature from your hand to activate the volatiles.
And then you smell first.
When you're ready, stick your nose in there, the whole nose.
Take a big smell. What does that smell like?
Wait,
Grassy.
are there people slurping already? I'm hearing some slurp. We got some experts in this room. They're slurping. So when you're ready, you can taste it. And
Yeah.
you hear the slurping because people are getting some oxygen in their mouth. Kind of like what you taste wine, yeah?
A little bit. And what you're going to get now, you really taste with your nose. But you'll get, if you get any bitterness that Selina talked about, it'll be on the side of your tongue.
The pungency.
You get a little bitterness. And if you get any
coughing.
pungency, the ibuprofen she talked about, it'll be in the back of your throat. This oil is pretty fresh. It's not greasy. You'll taste greasy. I mean, hey, look, all olive oil is oil. It's greasy. But relative to older oils, this is pretty clean. So this is an example of a very fresh fall harvest green fruit oil. Okay, this if you don't like this, then you need to work at it a little bit better. This is a nice
We
oil.
will have a sensory course here at the Olive Center in this room, actually. So if you feel like you want to learn more about it, feel free to register. We ready?
There's a lot to olive oil. There are more varietals of olives, and we have an enologist here. Tell me if I'm wrong, Andy. I think there's more varietals of olives than there are grapes even. Certainly as many. Well, he's looking at me like he doesn't know. That's good. So I can say whatever I want. So the point is that olive oil can be quite varied in character and flavor. And if you come to the sensory class that Davis does, you'll have a wonderful experience.
So
Okay.
when you are ready, you'll do the same thing with number two.
Same thing with number 2. Same thing with number 2.
So you want to trap the volatiles. We forgot to give you covers or lids. Sorry about that.
But do this,
But
you'll get it.
Put your
Same
nose in
thing.
there.
Take a big smell. What does that smell like?
What does it smell? Greasy? What else? Rancid? Pizza?
Fusty, we heard.
Pizza is an interesting
What was it?
comment. Pizza.
Pizza?
What's on the pizza?
Does anybody get Play-Doh? Does anybody get plastic? Yeah. This is a supermarket oil that was purchased off the shelf just the other day. Okay. Part of it's rancid. It's probably got some rancidity to it.
This is fusty.
It's fuzzy. It's mostly because the olives going into it were not very fresh.
Yeah, but this smell, some people say this smell like pizza. It's what's on the pizza. Sometimes if you get it with olives, right? They're fermented or they're processed olives, right? So this smells like fermented olives. Also the yeasty, yeah.
What do we? I'm going to ask our panel expert, Bruce, Davi. What do you get at it? Is this fusty?
Number 2.
Yeah.
It's fusty and rancid.
Yeah, fusty and rancid. You got it.
We got some olive oil
but
expert
hey,
panels.
it was only $5. A little moldy, yeah. Okay.
So it seems to me it's a dynamic process as well. Right?
Yes.
So sometimes you're comparing 2 different oils, but they might have been on the shelf for different periods of time. And I'm assuming that once you put it in the bottle, there's a degradation that occurs, which is why you would have a shelf life date or an end date on it. So that has to be taken into consideration as well, right?
Correct, yeah. So this is the chair of the food science department here at UC Davis, if you haven't met her, Dr. Linda Harris. So yes, and all these oils, we just bought them. So they're fresh to the consumers if you go to the store and buy them.
It's on the shelf right now, but
Right.
it might have been produced at different
Right.
Well,
times.
we can. I mean, we're leading you a little bit because we want you to understand what we're talking about. We're not, we didn't go make this fusty, but I promise you, we just went and bought a bottle and said, well, let's see how this is. Yep, that's what we expected. But so we are selecting, and the first one was more expensive. We knew it was a good oil, and this one we'll see. So,
yeah.
But yes, there's, it's fresh juice.
Yeah, it's a good point though. Every extra virgin olive oil will become a non-extra virgin olive oil with time.
Over time.
So it is a
That's
continuum.
your point.
Yeah. So
Is there a time frame for that then?
it's different depending on the oil, but a lot of producers commonly will put 2 years for their best before date.
Let's get through the tasting, and we have lots of time for questions at the end. So let's do
Okay,
it.
number 3. So we do the same thing. When you are ready, you can smell. And then you can taste. So the coughing, sometimes people would say this oil is 1 cougher or 2 coughers, and it's related to the pungency of the oil. What do you guys think about this one? Does it have defects? Is it rancid or fusty? No. Is it a little bitter, a little pungent, have some fruit? So it's extra virgin olive oil.
This is a very, very nice oil, but it's very different, well, somewhat different than the first one, which was also a very nice oil. So that gives you a sense that olive oil, good olive oils can be very different. Some are great with meat, some are great with fish, some are great with veggies. So let's finish with the fourth one.
Do we save
Same
the best
thing.
one for last or not?
Same one, same process, get those volatiles going. You're not in a tasting. You're not supposed to yell out your thoughts right off the bat.
So you're in the sensory theater, and we have these things that to put between you. So that is basically so that your reactions won't affect other
I want to
panels.
point something out. Does anybody feel how much greasier this is than that first? Remember I said it's not very greasy? This is really greasy. If you go back to 1 or 3, this is greasy. And that greasiness comes from the breakdown of the oil. So this is a rancid oil. This is rancidity at its finest. Okay?
This is what will happen even if you have a good extra virgin olive oil and you let it sit. You wait for that special occasion when you have guests over for 3 years. And then when the guests come, this is what you have.
Yeah, this is a great oil from my 2006
3 years ago.
trip to Italy. Yeah, okay, I'm sure it was good.
So, what do you think about the oils that you just taste? 4 of them. You like number 1? Great, you like the oil that Corto makes.
Did you like? But you like number 3 as well. That's the oil that UC Davis makes. Here, pat me on the back. I'll pat you on the back.
I know. That was good. We did not rehearse this at all. But some of you may find number 2 or number 4 to kind of taste familiar. There was a study done at UC Davis where 110 consumers, these are not trained panelists. They are basically just any consumers. And they rated 22 commercial olive oils, 11 imported, 11 domestic, made in California, so half and half. What they found in this study was that 44% of the consumers like rancidity, like fusty, musty, and winey flavors. So they like number 2, or maybe number 4. Okay? And the oils that were identified as high quality by the trained panelists, 74% of consumers disagree. And consumers prefer oils to be fruity, but not bitter.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, yeah. So my comment, people go, oh, that's too bad. So we can't, consumers like rancid oil. I say, well, they do now, but some of them do. But I love to tell a story about my father who loved his coffee and was, a successful guy. He could afford good coffee. So damn it, if he wasn't going to spend that 25 cents for a cup of Folgers, and that's what he drank. Did we all have our cup of Folgers today? No. Did anybody go to Starbucks? Oh, a few of us, yeah. How much did you spend? All of 25 cents? No. When my dad first tasted Starbucks, he went, oh, yeah, go ahead. And he's an aficionado. Consumers' palates change. They get educated. And that's what we spend our time doing. That's what we're doing today. And we got to show people, look, because most people that you give a good olive oil to that have never tried it go, wow, this is good. What's in it? Well, olives. Oh, wow, they don't know. So it's a learning process.
I want to give you an example how industry and academia can work together. Obviously, the report that's put out by the Olive Center back in 2010 was an example, but we're also working on other things. One example is the impact of crushing speed on olive oil extraction and quality. And I won't go in much detail about this, but I want to show you just the results. So now Dr. Juan Pilari, as of today, and
is he here?
He's not here.
Dang
He's working as a postdoc now. And David from Corto is sitting in the back there. Worked on this project together. Basically, they changed the processing speed of the crusher. That's the only parameter they changed. Just one thing. And see how that affect yield. Were they able to get more oil out of it? Were they able to get a better, higher quality oil? There's a lot to this, but I'll just show you one slide that basically summarizes some key points. So just by changing the speed, have the crusher run faster, they were able to increase the oil extraction by 1.2%, which is not a lot, but if you are processing at a huge scale, then that 1% does make a difference. And total phenols were increased by 18%. So the bitterness, the pungency were also increased. Chlorophyll increased, the oil was greener. The chlorophyll is what gives the oil the green hue. And pungency in the back of your throat, that was increased when you process at a faster speed. And in this case, the industry and academia worked together, but we didn't want to just keep this information to our lab or in Corto's company. We published this in 2 different journals, so all the processors and scientists in the world have the opportunity to review and even build on this kind of research. So we published this paper. You can read about it if you like. We also look at several other parameters during processing. So other than speed, we look at other crushing parameters and look at the interactions between them. So we published more papers on this, but I just wanted to give you this as an example, so how we are able to work together and do this kind of trial at an industrial scale, which is typically difficult for an academic institution. Question?
You said the RPMs in the processing, at what point, is that in the relaxer?
It's in the crusher. So
crusher.
when you are crushing up the fruit into paste.
And afterwards, if you stick around for a little tasting and some appetizers, David is here, so you can chat him up.
Oh, yeah.
So, go ahead. You were first.
So you're using hammer mill means it's also macerating the seeds, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the effect of that seed ripeness on the outcome of the oil?
This.
The seed ripeness?
Right.
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that it really has an impact. I mean, the seed is ripening at the same speed as the meat and the oil.
Yes. So in another study, we did compare that effect along with early fruit and a later fruit. So, but we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Grapes,
Yeah.
seeds.
Grapes do have seeds.
Does not always ripen at the same rate.
Oh.
Ah.
I see. Okay.
So you're
Yeah.
making an assumption enough.
That's why we have a partnership with academia
Yeah.
to work on it.
We'll
So
measure
that's
the
a good
maturity
point.
of the pits. Next
Yeah.
project, Abby.
Question?
Well, actually, it makes a huge impact on the wine.
Yeah. Thank you.
A comment and a question, actually. So I lived in Spain for a year in 1992, and the oil that I got used to enjoying as olive oil was number 2
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
list here. That kind of fusty, kind of like, and that's why I came back to the States and like, oh, Star olive oil is like, that's what I remember, and I thought that was great. And so I
Yep.
got educated and learned more.
Yeah.
And I just had a kind of nerdy question, but as you increase the RPMs, are you not increasing the heat in the fruits being
We found that wasn't significant. Yeah.
Okay, we're almost through this, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions, and we can answer questions. So, real quick, I'm going to kind of move us into the future and why we're so enthusiastic about the New World olive oil, what we're doing, what by us, I mean the California producers and U.S. producers. One of the things that's very encouraging for California producers, we did a quick survey about water usage. Is anybody aware that there's a water issue in California? Well, the good news is olives, turns out, uses arguably half the water that almonds use and less than most other crop options. And maybe even more importantly, if you don't water olives for a year or two, the trees will live. Your production floor will be sustained. If you don't water almonds for 1 year, they die. So that's good news. This is just restating what I just said. Also, quite encouraging is growth of consumption of olive oil. I'm going to talk in 1 second about consumption in the US versus other European countries. All positive news. So in the last 20 years, we've doubled consumption. Nothing but good news, which is why those of us in this are investing in the industry. This shows production of the US or California relative to consumption. So again, nothing but great opportunity. This is just shows US production versus US imports. So I see a lot of people go, oh, we'll never make it. It's such a huge industry. Spain is going to kill us. We can't compete. Really? All I see is opportunity. That's why we're doing this. Okay, so great news for California producers. This is what I was referring to. This is a fun thing. I just threw it all up at once to get through it. But, you know, Spain and Italy, big consumers of olive oil, right? I mean, they consume a liter, you know, this size of olive oil a month. Every man, woman, and child in your house consumes this a month. Spain, almost 2 of these, you know, a little of this, and, you know, that. So big consumers. U.S., only 1. What is that? Opportunity. So nothing but great opportunity for New World producers, California producers. So real quickly, a couple years ago, Bloomberg said, is American olive oil about to have its moment? Absolutely.
California olive oil is like California wine was 30 years ago. I admire the pioneers of the wine industry. They honored tradition, but they also innovated and pushed California wines to the legendary status they're at now. I believe California olive oil is primed to do the same thing. We are bringing the tradition of fall harvest olive oil to California and are pushing the boundaries of quality with modern technology. California has the perfect terroir for olives. There's the right amount of sunshine, the soils are rich, and the evenings are cool because of the coastal breezes. The master miller is like the winemaker of the olive oil world. As master miller, it is my job to determine when the fruit is at the peak of freshness and flavor in the fall. It is harvested and milled within hours to capitalize on those flavors. Olive oil making is a craft. We wanted to create a fruit-forward and balanced flavor profile, so we chose 3 varieties, Arbequina, Arbesana, and Koroniki. Arbequina is a fruit-forward variety. Arbesana tends to be a little more green and grassy. Koroniki is a very pungent variety. We bring these 3 varieties together to create a very balanced profile. The oil is kept in a climate-controlled cellar in stainless steel casks in order to preserve the flavor. I protect the oil in oxygen-free packaging because I want to make sure that the flavor that we capture in the harvest lasts through the very last drop. Chefs love our olive oil because it's fruity, it's balanced, and it enhances the flavor of their foods. Fresh ingredients deserve fresh olive oils, and fresh olive oil makes fresh ingredients so much better.
So hopefully you learned a little something. Again, this is a high-level cursory understanding of olive oil in our industry. Questions?
It says here that they grow best in Sacramento, Santana, Brady counties. Is that true? And that they also grow King, Kern, Fresno.
So you named off a whole bunch of counties. You can grow olives. There's somebody here that grows olives down in the Imperial Valley. Yep, all the way north. So olives are a very hardy plant, and they will grow a lot of places. So you can't grow them in the Midwest where it's so cold, but California is a Mediterranean climate.
Yeah, there's some olives in Texas, Georgia.
Yep, we have Georgia. We have someone from Georgia in charge of the Georgia Olive Growers Association. They grow olives in Georgia. Question?
So it looks like there's 2 different standards, right? The California standard is much more rigorous versus the USDA and the international standard. Any forecast if those standards may be merging, or maybe because of consumer demand in the future, maybe there'll be a more rigorous standardization and better educated consumers?
So the question is, there are different standards. There's USDA standards, IOC standards, California standards. Are the possibility for the standards to merge? So a key difference between the California standards and other standards that is enforced. It's a mandatory standard for olive oil producers that make more than 5,000 gallons per harvest. So that is a key difference. In terms of emerging standards, that is a big issue. Yeah, I think overall there's a lot of effort that goes into seeking for alignment and harmony in different standards.
Yeah, and I can also say there's a lot, it's been quite encouraging. When we started and Davis put out the study, we got a lot of boo, hiss, they don't know what they're doing. Because remember, we're this little teeny upstart. And over the years, we've sort of had the big players come to the table and say, all right, fine, we'll listen, we'll talk. Now, I want you to understand something. The standard that is the world standard we reference, that's like getting a D plus in school, is pretty bad. The California standard, which is much more rigorous, and I don't want to offend those who are on the technical committees, but I would venture to say it's like getting a C plus. Do you disagree with me, Bruce? Okay, he's on the technical. My point is, the standard is to elevate the base level. Once you get an understanding and get above that base level, then you're in the world of finer wines. Am I going to buy a $15 bottle of wine, a $20 bottle of wine, or a $200 bottle of wine? There's no standard for the $200 bottle of wine. There never will be. It's the maker, the winemaker, the olive oil miller that wants to excel, and so the standard. Don't get too caught up in, gee, does it meet the standard? Question?
Well, yeah, I've got another question, which is, why is it that we're not able to get the USDA standard to elevate it to the level as a mandatory standard for olive oil or for all olive oil? I mean, it would seem to be kind of a logical.
Yeah, Bruce, what the hell? No, I'm kidding. We're working very hard at it.
Sorry, let me just add on to that. Is it because Bertolli and Star are lobbying?
Yeah, obviously that's part of it. The big producers that produce this don't really want to elevate the standard. Why would they? They're making good money off bad oil. So they're going to lobby against it. But like I said, Selina's report really helped, and a lot of press, and we're working hard, and we're making progress. But this is a.
It may take another report funded by these companies to get to that level.
This is are you pitching us for more money?
Yeah. In front of all the room of witness.
Right. Another question back here?
Two related questions. First, the pit, because I didn't really quite connect, like, is it growing, is it smaller when it's earlier or whatever, or does it get big and hard later? And secondly, what is left over after the pressing process that can be used for something interesting?
Okay, a couple of good questions. So I'm going to give you a very layman's term on pits. There's people in here that are going to do better, but olives are a stone fruit, and after they flower, then there's a period that's called, pit hardening. There's pit development and pit hardening. So yeah, the pits grow to a certain point, and then you start to grow your accumulated oil. Beyond that, I'll hook you up with somebody afterwards that can talk to you about horticulture of olive pits, unless you can add to that. Good. And then as far as the byproduct, so that's a challenge for our industry that we're working very hard on. We're working in conjunction with CORE and others to try and figure out best uses, because by weight, the kind of olives we grow in California are maybe 20% by weight is oil. The rest is mostly water, but pulp and pit. We use that for cattle feed product now. We're looking at composting. There's other ideas to extract some of the polyphenols that are in there. So we're working on a lot of uses for the byproduct.
I wanted to get your thoughts on avocado oil. Pluses, minus when it comes to comparative products.
Okay. So avocado oil is definitely a specialty oil. Does anybody have a sense of volume of avocado oil relative to olive oil?
My understanding is that the first really good avocado oil was out of South Africa, and the Mexicans saw that. They're the dominant avocado producers in the Northern Hemisphere. And I was talking actually to an equipment manufacturer, and they've put in some high quality lines down in Mexico, but that's not really, it's a bulk business.
Avocado oil, my understanding is you can get extra virgin avocado oil. It's hard to get good flavorful extra virgin, but I think you can. Most avocado oil has to be refined. So it's an emerging opportunity for somebody that wants to pursue it.
And I can tell, and it also has quality and purity issues, just as in extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah, same kind of problems, yeah. Back here.
You guys were talking about the Best Buy date, and I've seen so many different calculations on the back of bottles. What is the standard in California or the United States for Best Buy? Is it 2 years? At one point I saw one that was, they had a 3-year from harvest date. And so
Would you like to handle that one?
So the best before date is not going to be the same for all the oils. Early harvest oil will have a longer shelf life compared to a later harvest, and there are some cultivars they just naturally have more antioxidants, more phenolics, so they will translate into a longer shelf life as well. So, but you know, it's not practical for a lot of producers to test every single lot or every batch of their oil. So the 2-year arbitrary is common practice, but we've been trying to help the producers to come up with a method that is scientifically sound, and that's what the California olive oil industry is currently doing.
So then the follow-up question is, it kind of sounds like there's not a mandate as to what they put on there. It's what they think is the best estimation of when the olive oil is going to essentially die or not be extra virgin anymore.
There's not a method that's required, but there's a recommendation to follow a scientific-based method, rather than just stamping a 2 or 3 years on the bottle.
Back there, you had a question. No, you. Yep.
Although there may be varietal differences, are olive oils a little bit like wine in that you have higher yield, maybe you have more water, that they're not as good, or there may be quality differences just due to yield?
I think the question is are there quality differences due to yield? Or are you asking if there's quality differences due to, or are you asking if different varietals produce different yields?
No, I understand the latter.
Okay, so are there quality differences due to yield?
Yield of the fruit or yield of the oil? Yield of the fruit.
Of the fruit.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I can't really answer that. I would say no, but again, there's people in the room that could probably answer that better. I know we've found a trade-off between a volume of fruit on the crop load versus oil contained in that crop. That's kind of we've seen that enough to, I'll make that layman's comment that if you have a huge crop, your oil per ton is going to be a little lower. So the plant will accommodate. If it's got a big load, it'll produce a little less oil, generally. No, not generally. Again, I'm going to let you afterwards talk to David and Jim. And yes? From Turkey?
I'm from Turkey.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we use the olive oil from beginning breakfast and to go to bed.
Yes.
Yeah. It's very important for us in the Mediterranean diet, you know. But we use the olive oils. If this year we produce, we use this product next year, not same year we use them. It's suitable, the taste is very nice, and this is the traditional. Maybe it's as a base for this reason.
No, that's very fair. And there are countries, Morocco is one, that they like a certain characteristic of their olive oil that a lot of the world would say, no, not so much. So, you know, God bless you. There's you know, Northern Italians like a very different oil than Southern Italians. Southern Italians like a soft, buttery oil. Northern Italians like a bright, crispy oil. So we have, you know, I think we need to probably call this good, but we will be here, Selina and I, right? You're sticking around. We'll be
Yeah.
here for a while, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you
Hopefully
to all
you.
of you.